Welcome back to another episode of the Life's Playbook podcast. This is season 2, episode 7 of the show. Season 3 is 5 episodes out. So, having said that, I'm your host. If you are new to the show, I'm your host, Quinn Jackson. This is my newly found co-host, Noah Hawley. If you haven't had a chance to watch this debut episode, it is still up. I encourage all of you guys who are new to the show to check that out. So, having said that, let's get into today's episode. Talking a little more NFL talk, some of that free agency buzz that's going out there. Also, a reminder in the NFL world that the NFL Combine is this week. I believe day 2 and day 1 were yesterday. And if you haven't got a chance, make sure to check those out. Watch all the upcoming prospects. I've heard some buzz around the Cleveland Browns. Coach Stefanski's been checking out some of the quarterbacks. So it's probably no secret in April when we draft a quarterback. Won't be a surprise to many of us. But your football housekeeping news, the combine is this week. So be on the lookout for all the prospects and whatnot and all the media surrounding them. So with that being said, let's get into season 2, episode 7, today's episode. Talking more NFL talk, free agency. More specifically with the Cleveland Browns, because there have been some big news out there. So, with that being said, Game Never Ends here at the Life'sPlaybook podcast. Let's get into it. Noah, you have graciously, informed me that the Browns have another stud coming up at free agency. Nick Chubb, our running back one. He's coming up on free agency. I assume I hear. Where do you think he's gonna land, or if we'd be able to extend him?
So the Browns, I think they're not going to release him. What they're probably going to do, running backs they tend to expire like really early. But with Nick Chubb, he's built a foundation in Cleveland. He's made a home with the fans. And then he ended up commenting on the NFL. He put laughing and crying emojis, as if like it was a joke. It was a joke to him. So I don't think he's going anywhere, but he is an upcoming free agent. And what I think they're going to do, they're going to maybe give him a bigger contract because he is coming off of an injury. Could have been career ending. So this could be a make or break year for Nick Chubb. So and he said he wants to have a comeback year. He said it's payback time. So I'm excited for this season, man. So if we re-sign Nick Chubb, boy.
Yeah, I'm excited for him too. He needs a bounce back season because he hasn't been on the field for a full season. It's been a hot minute since he's been on the field for a full season. Obviously, he went out, I believe, towards the end of this past season with the foot injury again. So it's been a while since that man's been on the field and given us a full season. But he's been in the league, I believe, seven seasons now. We drafted him in 2018 out of Georgia, and he's given us, I'd say, six to 5 great seasons. So obviously, injuries happen, and he hasn't been the same since that. But I'm excited for him as well. He needs to come back. We got to find a way to make the Myles Garrett thing and the Nick Chubb thing work out because obviously we need these guys. They are the pillars. Nick Chubb is the pillar of our offense, and Myles is the pillar of our defense. So we got to work something out. In my opinion, I think that with obviously with this Deshaun Watson contract, we're kind of like we're always going to be in the mud with this. It's our cap space is pretty much shot because of it. So I would love to see Nick Chubb stay. I'd love to see an extension happen, but with the Deshaun Watson contract and the piss poor cap space that we have, I don't know if it's going to happen. And there are a lot of running back needy teams that need a running back, and he is a great running back. He's phenomenal when he's on the field because he's an injury prone dude. But I don't know. I'd like to agree with you that he'd come back, but we got a lot going on, and we kind of have like next to no cap space to be able to extend some of these guys because of the Deshaun Watson contract, which is, how bad that is. And Deshaun Watson's going to be out for another season in a row because he tore his same Achilles. So it keeps getting worse with that man, and he's butchering the team because of it. But I'd like to believe that we'd be able to keep both Myles and Nick Chubb, but I don't think with the cap space we have, I don't think that's going to be possible. I think one of them might end up walking. Obviously, I think personally, if Myles Garrett ends up walking, that's going to be a much bigger blow compared to if Nick Chubb does end up walking. But we're in a mess. We're in a mess, a huge mess right now because of that contract. It's crazy because we got a lot of talented dudes. I know we're the Cleveland Browns, and people look at us at our history, and they don't think there's much in Cleveland, but we got guys. You know what I'm saying? We got guys and we got talent, but it's that front office, man. It's that front office butchering us every time.
Yes, sir. If I can add on to Deshaun Watson, what I think the Browns they should do, Deshaun does not want to play anymore. But he's honestly just taking the money from us. So if they can, they should cut his pay down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like so essentially restructure his contract.
Yeah. And then, we could restructure Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward wants to stay in Cleveland. We could restructure his contract. Greg Newsome. We restructure a lot of guys. And if Miles does decide to leave, I seen another post on TikTok. Let me see if I can find his username. It's a guy who uploads a lot about the Browns. He's been keeping me up to date on a lot of the stuff that's been going on with the free agency. Chef Zay, this guy right here, he says that Myles Garrett is not open to a contract extension. So if Myles Garrett does walk, that also frees up a whole lot of cap space. And we can get big guys like Matthew Stafford. I seen that we were in trade talks to get Matthew Stafford from the LA Rams. Former Super Bowl winner. He's a veteran guy. But if we do take a quarterback at second, then we can put like Shador or Cam Ward behind him. And for next season, that could be great for us.
I think that's a good plan. And Matthew Stafford, for those of you who aren't keeping up with the offseason, Matthew Stafford is on the trade block, or is coming up on the trade block. I don't think they officially gave him the request to be traded, but it is known that him and Cooper Kupp are both going to be on the trade block soon. And having a guy like Matthew Stafford does provide a veteran presence for whoever we draft at the number 2 pick, and they can learn from him because, again, as Noah said, he is a Super Bowl champ in 2021. Beat the Bengals with the Rams, Aaron Donald's last year, and he's got experience. So I do like that idea of bringing him in. If we do end up drafting a quarterback, which we probably will, which I'm going to touch up to that in a minute, the possibilities that we could be getting at quarterback due to what I've heard so far with Kevin Stefanski and him meeting with some of the quarterbacks at the combine. I'm going to touch up on that in a minute, but I do like the idea that you brought up, Noah, restructuring a lot of guys. Because Myles Garrett, he was also a big contract on the cap space. And we do have a lot of other big guys on the cap space as well. I know Jedrick Wills. He's one of our left tackles. I just seen earlier today that we might be doing something with him real soon because DeJuan Jones, he's kind of risen up in the depth chart as well, and he's kind of proven himself as a capable left tackle. So we might be moving off of him. And good riddance. He's another one of those big guys that's on the cap space, and he is also in a Nick Chubb situation. He kind of can't stay on the give us a full season because he's always hurt. But I do like that idea of restructuring guys and possibly going after a veteran dude to come in here and teach whoever we draft at the number 2 overall pick. I do like that idea. And whatever we do with Jedrick Wills, good riddance, because even when he was on the field, he wasn't that great. I don't even know why we drafted him as high as we did in 2022, but I do like that idea of restructuring people. I think it's definitely needed if we're going to continue to bless Deshaun Watson with staying on our team. It's definitely needed. Now, going back to what I said earlier about Kevin Stefanski, it's no secret that he was at the combine. He's been at the combine these past couple days. He's talked to some of these quarterback prospects that are working out. Obviously, Cam Ward, he's one of the guys that I believe opted out of participating in this year's combine. But I have heard that Kevin Stefanski has spoken to Jalen Milroe from Alabama, Shador Sanders from Colorado, and getting the other quarterback. He's spoken to 3 of them so far that I've heard. Based on those two prospects, obviously I think Shador's the best fit. I think Milroe he's got a lot to figure out. He's got a lot of problems, and I think the back half of the Alabama season from this previous year kind of showed that he's got a lot of problems that he's got to work out. So I think between those two guys, Shador would be the best fit for Cleveland. I mean, obviously Shador, he's shown and verbally shown liking the Cleveland, and I think he could really benefit from somebody like Matt Stafford because they both kind of have the same kind of style of play, if you know what I mean. Shador he's a lot younger than Matt Stafford, obviously, so he's naturally more athletic than him, but I think they both kind of have the same similar style of play. They're both kind of the traditional pocket passer. Again, Shador obviously has the athleticism because he's younger than Stafford, but I do think that Shador, he's the right pick, and bringing him in to learn under Stafford, if we do go after somebody, I think that would be a smart move to make on our part.
Yeah, completely agree with you. Putting a veteran quarterback in front of a young like quarterback such as Shador, that'd be such a great structure for the Browns. You know, we've always struggled in the past with our quarterback room. We never really had a quarterback that stuck with us. We had Baker Mayfield. He underperformed 1 year, and honestly, I don't know why we got rid of him. You know, he went to Tampa. He's doing great things there, man. People make mistakes. The Browns, they make a lot of mistakes. And somewhere I feel like we need to really attack on in the draft is our wide receiver. We have no true wide receiver one. We have Jerry Jeudy, of course, but he's not really a true wide receiver one. We had Amari Cooper, but he wasn't a true wide receiver one either. And if we do attack the draft with a wide receiver, this year's draft is stacked with wide receivers. Ohio State, they tend to produce good wide receiver ones.
That is true. They do. They've prospered many greats, many legends. One of them is still at the university as we speak. Jeremiah Smith, phenomenal kid. It's a shame he's got to play 2 more years in college. Otherwise, he would be the number one go-to to go after in this draft. As true, Ohio State does produce phenomenal talent at the wide receiver level. Brian Hartline is a phenomenal wide receiver coach. He was recently promoted to our offensive coordinator after Chip Kelly left. Is with the Raiders. It's going to be the OC for the Raiders. But Brian Hartline, he does a good job with those boys over there. You know, to what you were saying about the receiving room for the Cleveland Browns although we do have Jerry Jeudy, it is a rather weak room still in and of itself. I know Jerry Jeudy did just make this year's Pro Bowl. He is phenomenal, but he's kind of the only piece we have. And if we are going to go with the quarterback here at 2, we want to make sure we got the right weapons for him. And again, draft class, this year's draft class is stacked. And there's a lot of help that we could draft for whoever we get at the second pick, whether that be a quarterback or not. There is a lot of help we can get. There's a lot of receivers we can get. I think personally though that we do. Although this receiver room it's not the best compared to some other teams out there, and especially compared to like the Ravens and the Bengals, who have proven wide receiver ones and proven wide receiver 2s. I do think that our receiving core can be reliable. Cedric Tillman, he's young, but he can be reliable when he's available to play. Njoku, I do understand he had a pretty bad down year this year, but I think he can. And obviously, he was also injury prone too. But I think he can also, on a good day, he can still be that Njoku that we know and love as Cleveland Browns fans. And on his best years, he can even be a top 5 tight end in the league, in my opinion. In a healthy, good year for Njoku, he could be a top 5 tight end in this league. So I agree with you wholeheartedly about the receivers. I think we do need to bring in at least one more guy, preferably to replace Elijah Moore, because that dude has done absolutely nothing since coming to Cleveland, and he's kind of a waste of cap space. So I do think we could bring in one more guy to kind of replace Elijah Moore, at least. But I would say we have a pretty reliable pass game as a whole. Obviously, we've got injury-ridden guys, and they got to be able to give us a full season. But when they are out there, they can give us good looks. But who would you say that in this draft we could get to replace Elijah Moore if we did end up replacing Elijah Moore?
So I feel Ohio State wide receiver Egbuka. He's not really that high in the draft class, but he is rated 5th overall. We could go for Travis Hunter at 2 because I know that Abdul Carter, his draft stock may be declining because he did suffer an injury. So he may not be taken in the first round at all. So we could take Travis Hunter at 2. He could be a good wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Or we could also, outside of the draft, Myles Garrett wanted out. We could go with the trade for Matthew Stafford and get Cooper Kupp at the same time. We could use his cap space that he's leaving with and get two veterans in our quarterback and wide receiver room. Two spaces where we need that help.
But I would agree with that for the most part. Emeka Ibuka, he's a reliable dude. He's reliable. Slightly on the older side though, coming into this draft because he played so long in college. He is slightly on the older side in the draft, but he's a reliable dude. On the Matthew Stafford Cooper Kupp, I mean, you could make it work. I don't know. I mean, those are. I know Matthew Stafford is like, I believe he's coming up on 40. I think he's like 37 years old right now. And Cooper Kupp, he's starting to age a little bit. So these are two rather older guys. And again, there are other quarterback needy teams, and there are other proven wide receiver one needy teams that Cooper Kupp could fit in. But that would be a rather big haul, I'd say, despite those two guys' ages to bring in. If we ended up pulling something off like that, that would be a rather big haul for us to do. Now, whether we could do it or not remains to be seen. But I don't know. I just think looking at this offseason, I think the focus, and I think Stefanski knows this as well. I think that the big focus for Cleveland as a whole is try to keep Chubb and Miles where they're at, try to make something work out, and try again with the quarterbacks situation. I mean, I know the quarterback situation has been a disaster in Cleveland's history. We've had over 40 different guys every season, but we got to keep trying. We got to keep trying at that quarterback position, and I think that's where ultimately the front office's focus for the Cleveland Browns is right now. Is the quarterback, which I mean, I'm not gonna gripe on that too much because there's only so much that we can do, and there's only so many paths we can take. But yeah, it's been a mess. This Deshaun Watson thing really can't stress it enough how much this Deshaun Watson contract has really put us in the hole. It's kind of limited us from reaching out and doing a lot of things that we could be doing to better improve the team for the future. But it's a mess, man. It's a mess.
So I got a question for you. As you know, T. Higgins, he is coming up on the free agency. If the Bengals are not able to pay him what he wants, what do you feel like the Browns getting T. Higgins to be our wide receiver one? How would that go to you?
Well, that's a good question because the Bengals obviously their cap space is just as butchered as ours is. I mean, they have Joe Burrow on a multi-million-dollar contract, and Trey Hendrickson, who is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, is probably going to want big money. And he's really the only golden boy on the defense. And Jamar Chase is going to want more money than Jefferson, if not the exact same. So their cap space potentially is just as butchered as ours. And, T. Higgins is most likely going to walk. I agree with you that T. Higgins is most likely going to walk because the Bengals, they're historically known to be a cheap organization. They're historically known to pay a small favoritism. Essentially, they're known to pay the stars and only the stars these big contracts. And if T. Higgins does end up walking, and if we were to make a move at T. Higgins to be that wide receiver one, I think it would kind of end up the same way that the Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy thing worked out, because I believe that the whole reason we made that Jerry Jeudy move in the offseason of 23. 23. I mean, if I'm wrong, I believe the whole reason we made the move for Jerry Jeudy in 23's offseason was to bring in a proven wide receiver one. And that's essentially why we let go of Amari Cooper. Not to mention Amari Cooper is also an older dude. And the Bills were also in need of a reliable, proven wide receiver one. But so I believe that the reason we made Jerry Jeudy move was to start fresh. And if we brought in T. Higgins, which I don't think is a bad idea, but I think he knows it, and us as Cleveland Browns fans know this, I think it would kind of end up the same way as that, where one of those two guys would eventually have to walk. Mainly because they're both studs. Both these guys are studs. And both of these guys are going to want the ball. And both of these guys on any given team can be a wide receiver one. So I think it would essentially be trading for another wide receiver one. And I don't know if that would work out too well for us. Because I know T. Higgins, he's going to want the bag and he's going to want to get that number one job. wherever he goes, which is perfectly understandable for him because he is that dude. And again, I said last video that on any given team, he would be a wide receiver one. So I just think that it's an interesting move. Would we make it? Probably not. But and if we did make it, I think it would be another Amari Cooper 2.0 situation where we essentially have two guys that are both wide receiver one worthy guys, and one of those guys eventually would end up getting traded because of that, because we have two wide receiver ones headbutting essentially for that number one spot. But I do like the idea of that move because T. Higgins is that dude, but I just don't think it would exactly work out. I think we would have another Amari Cooper 2.0 situation, but that is a good question. That is a good question.
Yeah, there's a lot of receivers like that in the league. Receivers who want to be the wide receiver one, but they don't really have the capability because there's someone outshining them. Like T. Higgins, he was outshined by Jamar Chase. Brandon Ayuk, he was in trade talks last year. Debo Samuel was outshined him.
Ayuk might be in trade talks this year. He
Again,
might be in trade talks this year with how poorly the Niners have been lately. Debo's in trade talks, I know that much, but Ayuk might be in trade talk this year again. Who knows?
a lot of these receivers out there, they're like drama queens when it comes to getting the football. Stephon Diggs, he's I don't really know how to describe Stephon Diggs. He was in Minnesota, He was a good receiver. Then he went to Buffalo. He increased, that's where he shined. And then he went to the Texans, and he got injured. So he's coming up on free agency this year. I would say we could get him to be a veteran in our receiver room. I don't know. You're right. There's a lot of receivers out there. They do tend to be like Amari Cooper, wanting that football, trying to improve their name, make a name for themselves on the team.
Yeah, and that's, while it's understandable why a lot of these receivers would want to go out there and be on and have their own team, have their own receiver room. It's not possible. The receivers are on high demand. Now, I will say, as of late, with the running back position, I do think that, and how well Saquon did and how well Derrick Henry did, they kind of paved the way, a revelation. They kind of revived the running back position. So I do think teams as of recent are starting to become more run heavy, starting to go back to running the football more because running backs are cheap these days, and there are a lot of good, elusive, versatile running backs that can do more than just run the ball. And that's kind of damaged their wide receiver position, I'd say, a little bit, because everybody's turning back to the run game, because a great run game can get you far, and that is the case with the Cleveland Browns too. When we do have a healthy offensive line and a healthy running back, we can also get far in the run game. But these receivers, you're right, they do tend to act like divas, and they do tend to chase the bag a lot, which is the situation with Tyreek Hill, and I believe that's also the situation with Stephon Diggs. Not to mention the Texans did just come off of being in the playoffs for the first time in forever after beating us in 23. So I think that's another reason why Diggs went to the Texans, because the Texans were one of those hot rising teams that were on the come up, and he wanted to be a part of that. Is also understandable. But I'm just going to say this. If you receivers are going to do that, you can't expect, first off, you can't expect to get a big contract everywhere you go. And two, you can't expect that you're going to be utilized in a situation, in an organization that is predominantly known to run the football. Like us, for example, we are predominantly known to run the football. That's been something the Browns have been historically good at. So if you receivers are going to bounce around teams like that, I would say don't expect too much. They're still great. Receivers are still great. I'm not saying that the running backs are starting to outshine the receivers. As we've seen in the past, receivers have been starting to outshine running backs. But I think after this season, with how well Saquon did and how well Derrick Henry did, they've kind of revived running the football again. And I think a lot of teams are starting to utilize the run game a lot more, which is starting to become a small issue for receivers, because now organizations aren't going to be as in desperate need of a wide receiver one. And in the case of Debo, he's in the trade talks right now. He essentially wants to do just that. He wants to go to a team that's gonna, give him an opportunity to be a wide receiver one. I think he's gonna find a team? Probably. Do I think he's gonna be specifically a wide receiver over there? Probably not, because he is versatile. But these receivers, you are right. They do act like divas, and they do expect to make that money, which is understandable. But again, the league has kind of revived the run game, so the urgency for a wide receiver, in my opinion, isn't as great as it would have been 2 years ago.
Yeah, at all. You're right. I agree with you. They're like one of the top peak athletes in the world at the wide receiver position. It's one of the hardest, but it's not the hardest position to play. So how do you feel about switching over from the offense to the defensive side of the conversation about the Cleveland Browns?
I mean, hey, I'm all for it. I mean, there's a lot we got to be doing on defense too. There's a lot of guys that just like Nick Chubb, they're great, but they can never give us a full season because they're always injured. Again, I hope Owusu Koromoa can come back, because he would have made the Pro Bowl had he not got injured. I believe he would have made the Pro Bowl. He would have been our fourth Cleveland Browns player to be selected in this year's Pro Bowl had he not got injured. But he's one of those guys that's great, but he can never really give us a full season because he's always hurt. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to shifting gears onto the defensive side of the ball, because we do got a lot of red flags that need to be addressed there as well.
Yeah. So in my opinion, our defense was not terrible. We didn't really get blown out in a lot of the games. Most of touchdowns from other teams came from interceptions from Jameis Winston, or DTR not being able to do much. It's mainly caused by our offensive line and our quarterback situation. But on the defensive side, I feel we need to obviously improve at the interior D-line position, and then we need to find people who can do what Myles Garrett did. Because if Myles Garrett does walk, then that leaves a big hole in our defense. Like, our secondary is fine. We have some top-tier defensive backs. Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, Denzel Ward. They're all good guys. Our secondary is not bad at all.
Martin Emerson.
Martin Emerson.
I can't stand that dude sometimes. He's so inconsistent sometimes. Like, I know you see this. Like, when you watch him sometimes, he can be so inconsistent sometimes. That's just my opinion. But man, I don't know about him. Sometimes I'd be saying he needs to get traded because of the plays he be letting up.
So just Jair Alexander, he's coming up in the free agency as well, or like he's coming up in trade talks. I seen somewhere that Jair Alexander's the Green Bay Packers are going to let him talk to other teams to get trades. Do you think that somehow Jair Alexander would come to the Cleveland Browns in any case?
Well, I think he's first off for the Packers. I don't exactly know the reason behind this trade. I mean, I guess if it's a cap space reason, because he's one of their guys that has a heavy toll on their cap space, then I can understand that. Or if they just want to move away from him in general, because they believe they could draft somebody who could be better than him in the long run, then that's understandable too. But for the Packers, I don't exactly understand the reasoning behind this trade. But I mean, I'm seeing the same thing you're seeing. They are willing to trade that man, and he is great. He's great. He's one of them trash talking DBs, which is always fun to have on your team and fun to watch. He's a tough guy. He's still great. It's not like he's not out of his prime. As far as him coming to Cleveland, I don't think. Again, kind of like the T. Higgins situation. Great corner, great DB. He can still provide a lot. It's not like he's terrible, but I don't know if we'd be able to. I don't know if we'd be able to pull something off like that. I mean, and plus for him, I think he's looking at Cleveland as kind of like one of those last teams that he would accept an offer from. You know what I mean? Because with being a trash talker and being a hothead, you make your own cases for yourself. And I don't think if somebody were to come up to him and ask, how would you feel about getting traded to Cleveland? I think he probably wouldn't want to come here, and I don't blame him. But he is a great corner nonetheless. I hear what you're saying. He's great. He's not out of his prime. At least I don't think so. He's still a great dude. Again, I don't understand the Packers' reasoning behind this request. It's probably got to be a cap space reason, or they're probably looking long term on this dude. But he's still a great DB. And I think he will get a lot of trade offers. Will he get one from us? Probably not. But hey, who knows? Maybe we could ship Emerson over there. Emerson's just as young as he is, and maybe Green Bay can work the inconsistency out of him. But I do hear what you're saying on Jair Alexander.
Jair, I love seeing trash talk during the game. It's just basically happy. Like when the San Francisco 49ers and the Browns played that pregame fight that happened, I was like, yo, I didn't know we were like this, man. I haven't seen that in a long time. Obviously, the Steelers and Browns, there's a lot of trash talk that used to happen back in the day. So that was really the last time I seen something happen on the Browns. Wow, that was when we had the best defense too.
Yeah.
We were top. Say it.
I think we were the number one defense that year in 23, and then 24. I think we were like 19th, which is a huge regress, but it's not the worst. But you could chalk it up to the offense being as bad as it is, and the defense always having to constantly be out there. So when you got to play a lot of football defensively, you're going to give up a lot of looks. You're going to give up a lot of yards and whatnot because you're constantly out there. Those dudes are constantly getting tired. So there's a number of reasons why we went from the number one defense in the league at one point to top 20. But yeah, and what's crazy about that Niners game? I believe we won that one. We won that Niners game. But
you can't really blame our defense, man. High school. We take this to high school, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have the best. Okay. You remember the game, right?
Yeah.
First half we did great, But then the second half, offense wasn't scoring none of that. And we lost that game. It's something similar to Browns, man. Like our Browns defense has always been great. It's just, when you're out there repeatedly after maybe giving up no yards or getting an interception and the offense goes and turns the ball over, your body wears down. And if I was on the Browns, I would get pretty annoyed as a defensive player, man.
Yeah, I would too, because the offense has to hold up their end of the bargain. They got to put points on the board. And again, Cleveland Browns historically haven't been great at the quarterback position, and the quarterback is the most important position on that team. He kind of dictates how the offense looks, and it hasn't looked great. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I would be just as annoyed if I was a defensive player on the Browns as well, having to constantly be out there every other possession because our offense either gets a turnover or they have to punt the ball, go 4 and out.
So Browns, we need more linebackers. Owusu Koramoah, he's probably the biggest linebacker we have. His injury did affect us negatively last year. We need more names in the linebacker space. We also need to improve with our defense. Like the run defense isn't really there. We can stop the pass, but the run is what we really need to work on.
So, yeah, that makes sense. I hear what you're saying. So, as far as who we get to kind of be that run stopper, because Miles, he's kind of that guy on the defensive front that can stop both the pass and the run. And if he ends up walking, which he probably will, we'd have to obviously look into the draft, maybe day 2, for somebody an interior D lineman, somebody who can stop the run. Now, Michigan does have Mason Graham and Kenneth Walker, but those guys are both round 1 dudes. I know Mason Graham for sure is. So Mason Graham, there's no way he's going to fall to the second round. Somebody's going to pick him up in the first round. Kenneth Walker, on the other hand, who knows? Maybe he's just as good as Mason Graham is. So we could look into drafting somebody like those two, somebody who can just utterly shut down the run game. But we would definitely have to find an interior D lineman that could do that. It could stop the run.
So in the free agency, there's a lot of veteran guys out there. There's Wagner, he's coming up. How would you feel about Bobby Wagner? He's older, but he's done a lot. I think he was on the Chargers last.
Bobby Wagner, wow. Former Super Bowl champ. He's older guy. You're right. He's an older guy. He provides, at this point, he would provide leadership, experience, whatnot. I wouldn't be opposed to having him on the team. I wouldn't be opposed to that. He would definitely be a veteran presence for our linebacker core for sure. I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I do think with how well the Commanders did this year, I think they'd want to keep him because he does bring that leadership and that veteran presence to a young Commanders team. So I do think they would want to hold on to him for at least another season or two. But he would be a good candidate to come in there into our linebacker room and kind of fix things and shape things around.
So the dude I was looking for, Chase Young. he hasn't had the best career, but he hasn't had the worst career either. You know, he did some big time at Ohio State. He won us that. He was a part of the championship team with was he on that championship team?
Yeah, which championship team? The 21 Buckeyes?
I think so. Because I know he won the Heisman. I think he was a runner up for the Heisman. But if we could bring in Chase Young, we can maybe have him fill the spot where Myles Garrett was. He's not like Myles Garrett, but I feel he could do something somewhat to what Myles Garrett did.
You think Chase Young could do that? I don't think Chase Young. I agree with you. I don't think he's terrible, but he certainly hasn't had the career that we thought he would have coming into the league. He's bounced around from team to team, which is not ideal. Not the ideal career you would want in the NFL. I believe he's currently with the Saints right now. Whether the Saints hold on to him or not remains to be seen. I do understand the Saints have Cameron Jordan over there too, and he is their Myles Garrett. So I don't know if it would make sense to hold on to him and Chase Young. But if Chase Young bounces to another team, could he fill the shoes? Do you really think he could fill the shoes that Myles Garrett would be leaving if he walks? You really think that?
I don't think he could fill the shoes, but he could make a baby step. It's something. Myles Garrett leaves a big hole in our defense, man.
That is true. That is true. Which is why I'm always hoping that we can work something out, to try to get him to stay, but I don't think Myles wants to be a part of essentially another rebuild process. That's essentially where we're headed right now. As an organization as a whole, we're headed towards another rebuild. I don't think Myles wants to be a part of that, which I guess is understandable. He wants to win now, and he has been in the league for 8 seasons. But I mean, I guess I hear what you're saying with Chase Young, and he could definitely come in and stand in for like a year or two until we find a proven edge. Or still, if we do still end up going with Abdul Carter at 2, I know despite he does have that injury, and he's gonna have to get that looked at, and he might have to have surgery on it. Gonna have to get that looked at. But if he's still considered a high round pick and we still get him, I do think that Chase Young could stand in for at least a year or two to fill those shoes until we find somebody who's proven, who can really get their name out there, or trade for somebody from another team. There is always that, but we'd have to get a huge package for whoever we traded from another team.
Who could we possibly trade for to get like obviously there's Micah Parsons, but the Cowboys I feel they will not give up Micah Parsons for Myles Garrett.
Yeah, they probably won't. And plus Micah my thing with Micah is he's too much of a yapper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
He's got his own podcast. Shout out to his podcast. I'd be watching it sometimes. I see the clips on TikTok and whatnot. But he be on his podcast, I think, way more than he backs up his field play. So I just think if Micah were ever to come to Cleveland, he definitely needs to back up his play a lot more. But he is a great defensive end. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's all he does is stick to his podcast, but his play hasn't been great as of recent, and he's kind of put more of his attention on his podcast. But as far as who I think we could trade for from like another team, I mean, there is Max Crosby out there, or we could do, we could pull a little in division trade. We could trade for Trey Hendrickson.
Don't tell me you're talking about JJ Watt, man.
No. Well, we could TJ from the Steelers. Miles and TJ trade would be astronomically huge, but realistically, I don't think that's possible. But we could do a little in division trade for somebody like TJ, somebody like Trey Hendrickson, maybe. There is Max Crosby out there, whatnot, or Joey Bosa from the Chargers, one of the Bosa brothers. But those would be the teams I would, if we were to trade for somebody who's of the same level as Miles, those would be the teams I would be looking at. Because they have guys that are comparable, if not slightly better than Miles. Those would be the teams I would be looking at.
Yeah, that's some big holes to fill in our defense with Miles leaving, if he leaves. So we just gotta figure out something to do with that.
Yeah, but yeah, defensively and offensively, again, that Deshaun Watson contract has it's butchered a lot of the things that we could be doing to better further the team in the future. And hopefully, once this whole contract is up, the organization learns not to do something stupid like this again, so that we can keep free cap space room to be able to build for the future. Because Man, we're very limited right now. But having said that, this has been season 2, episode 7 of Let's Playbook podcast. Again, if you haven't gotten a chance to check out my co-host's debut video, I encourage you guys to check it out, like and subscribe. It is greatly appreciated, and it helps elevate the channel to new heights. If you are a Cleveland Browns fan and you end up watching this, let us know in the comments below what you think, where you think we should look defensively, who you think we could bring in to fill the gap that Myles Garrett would be placing if he walks? What should we do with Nick Chubb offensively? And if you think maybe pulling in another receiver to help out the receiver room would be beneficial to the Cleveland Browns. But with that being said, we will catch you guys Sunday. Till next time, the game never ends here with the Last Playbook podcast. Peace out.